The alarms blared through the station, a high-pitched wail that sent every alien species into a frenzy. Vorakians skittered across the floor, their chitinous limbs clacking as they scrambled for the nearest escape pods. The Drazikans, massive and slow, moved in tight formations, blocking corridors in their desperate attempts to secure themselves. The Zelthari barely moved at all. Many had collapsed where they stood, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of fear coursing through their telepathic minds. The fire was unlike anything they had ever seen. It didn't spread like the controlled blazes in their environmental simulations. It roared, hungry and wild, feeding off the station's oxygen systems and growing hotter than their sensors could calculate. Flames curled along the bulkheads, licking at support beams that groaned under the rising temperature.
No one was thinking about containment. No one was thinking about fighting it.
Everyone was thinking about survival, except for one. Jonathan Carter moved with practiced efficiency, pulling on his gear as he ran toward the danger. His boots pounded against the metal flooring, his breath steady despite the smoke already beginning to seep through the corridors. He didn't hesitate. Hesitation got people killed. Through the thickening haze, he caught sight of a Vorakian technician frozen in place, eyes wide, mandibles twitching in blind panic. Carter barely slowed, grabbing the alien by its upper limbs and shoving it toward a clear passage.
Go. Now.
His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The Vorakian stumbled, startled into motion, and disappeared into the throng of fleeing bodies. The closer he got to the lower sector, the worse it became. Automated suppression systems flickered uselessly, their chemical foam already spent. The emergency bulkheads had jammed, leaving open pathways for the fire to spread unchecked. The station groaned under the stress, and Carter could already feel the heat warping the air around him. He reached for his comms. "Command, this is Carter. Fire suppression is failing. If we don't act fast, we're losing this entire deck." Static. Then a voice, frantic, garbled. "Human, leave. Uncontrollable." "Negative," Carter snapped. "We can still stop this." The response was silence. He already knew what they were thinking. The Vorakians had done the calculations. The Drazikans had weighed the risks. The Zelthari had already resigned themselves to fate. To them, this wasn't a fire, it was a death sentence.
But Carter didn't think that way.
He adjusted the seals on his helmet and pushed forward, straight into the smoke-choked corridor. If no one else was going to save the station, then it was up to him. The fire had reached critical mass, an unstoppable force tearing through the lower sector. Carter knew there was no conventional way to put it out. The station's automated systems had failed, and the alien engineers were too paralyzed by fear to offer real solutions. That left only one option, a controlled vent. If he could trigger an external breach in the right place, the vacuum of space would snuff out the fire instantly. But there were complications. The blast had already weakened key support structures, and a miscalculated vent could rip the entire deck apart. He had no backup, no second chances. He pulled up a schematic on his wrist display, scanning for the most effective breach point. The maintenance sector, reinforced plating, structural integrity intact. It was his best shot. He rerouted his path, pushing through corridors barely holding together. Smoke swirled around him, turning every step into a fight for breath. When he reached the access hatch, he found the control panel flickering weakly. Damage had corrupted its main interface. The breach would have to be done manually. He set his jaw. That meant explosives. His fingers worked quickly, attaching a series of shaped charges along the outer hull. The Vorakians would call this reckless. The Drazikans would call it suicidal. But Carter didn't waste time debating risks. He calculated them, accepted them, and acted. He double-checked his seals. He had exactly 30 seconds from detonation to secure himself before the vacuum pulled everything out. His comms crackled to life, voices layered in panic. Aliens shouting about structural failures, evacuations, demands for an explanation. He ignored them. There wasn't time for discussion. 15 seconds. He sprinted to the nearest airlock, slamming the override. The doors hissed open, and he dove inside just as the countdown reached 0. The explosion rocked the station, a deep, guttural groan of metal as the hull ruptured. The fire was there 1 second, gone the next. A violent rush of air, debris, and flame vented into the void, leaving behind nothing but silence. Carter's chest heaved. His oxygen levels were critical. His vision blurred. He had done it. Then everything went dark.